Hey, how are you? You ought to be able to. I'm going to make you the presenter,
Sure.
but let me just do a little formal intro first, and then I'll make you the presenter. How's that kind of? God is an awesome guy. I like everybody, to be honest with you, but God's great. What does that say behind you?
That's creative. Do something creative every day.
Oh, I like that. That's
Yeah.
nice as a
That's,
background. It's pretty cool. And you got a matching shirt and everything. Very, very nice. So I like that. All kidding aside, God has spoken for us for a number of times, right? He spoke for us last year on a modernization, I think. Oh, it was application modernization webinar, which we're going to do in a 2003 version in a month. And you're now, congratulations. I haven't spoken. You got a promotion, president and CEO of Growth Markets. So what is that all about? You have like a new division, or it's just?
yeah, it's like, we just kind of kickstarting an entirely new line of business focusing on all the non-US regions in Europe, Asia Pacific, Oceania, MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, right? So currently Amzur is like 100% focused in the US, but we are expanding outside of US as
Oh,
well.
I see. I get it. The growth markets. Yeah. Now I understand. So thrilled to have you. And you can just see a little bit about his background. This little paragraph doesn't really do him justice, but entrepreneurship, consulting, technology transformation, delivery, product platforms, re-engineering. You look at his background on LinkedIn, I'm sure everybody here is happy to have you all connect with him. It's really deep background. I see HP and some of these other big companies where you got your start, and really your engineering background, everything. So really appreciate you being here and sharing with the folks. And with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you the presenter. And then like we did before, once you're up and running, I'll go away. I'll be here, but I'll go
Sure.
away on the picture and sound, and I'll just be behind the scenes waiting for you. And then we'll ask a couple questions and go from there. All right, you're going to love
Sure.
this, everybody. Go ahead, Gano. Show your screen. We'll get that ready. And then once I see that working, I will stop sharing. Just got to get the right screen.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. That was a great introduction. Some of you folks probably have already heard me last time, a few months back, that I did a webinar on app modernization and hyperautomation as well. But this is like focused purely on hyperautomation today, right? One of the key things probably all of you on the call are aware and are going through is basically working through how to make your respective functions or companies or enterprises that you're working within, right? Business agile, and also at the same time try and have a control on the cost structures and so on and so forth, right? So we have over the last few years have seen a significant amount of upside with regards to companies specifically within the small and medium and the mid-market segments, right? Transform and transfer over to the cloud, trying to kind of take advantage of what the cloud has to offer so that they can basically get to the markets faster, get to their consumers faster, deliver on their products and services faster, thereby trying to kind of gain a great significant advantage and also superior returns, right? So, now the big question is, how is this all possible, right? Hyperautomation, as you all know, is basically it's basically old wine in a new bottle, if you personally ask me, right? It's not that some of the concepts of hyperautomation did exist and this is like some new technology. Hyperautomation is not a technology, it's more a concept and a framework, and we'll just kind of go through that in a little more detail, right? First things first, there has been, this is the Gartner study. We have seen a shift in, say, for example, early 2010s to like 2015, or even like mid 2000s, where most of the companies or enterprises or organizations have been focusing on controlling costs, thereby trying to kind of redeploy some of the capital back into developing and delivering on new products and services and market expansions and so on and so forth. But over the last about few years, we have seen a significant shift from a cost focus to a market focus, right? Revenue generation, new customers, new products, new features, new services, right? So most of the companies are actually trying to kind of vie for the same marketplace in a way that they can outsmart their competition, at the same time provide a certain differentiation to the product lines or service lines, and at the same time grow at like a 10x and a 20x value, right, over time. Now, the question is, how is that possible, specifically with almost all businesses running at the backbone of a technology stack that they probably understand or don't, right? And that's why if you see, most of the surveys of late in the last about 3 to 6 years, the top three things that have come out very significantly is basically around the customer engagement. The second is revenue for per customer, which is what we call as the share of wallet in business terms, right? And then more importantly, given the digitization that is happening at a pace unprecedented, right? Almost all companies want to kind of push their products out through the digital channels, basically to kind of attract as many consumers as possible in the tech savvy worlds, or uh, and also the not so tech savvy worlds that are basically the emerging economies and all that stuff, right? So with that said, you probably have a question. So what does this mean? How does this kind of translate into a company with regards to what they need to kind of focus on and what shouldn't, right? We'll come to hyperautomation in a bit, but what areas are the ones that need to be identified and be worked upon to be able to kind of allow for that space for accelerated automation to be able to deliver those offerings, right? So, and that's where the second. So essentially, as probably all of you know, right, an enterprise or any organization for that matter is essentially made up of two parts, right? The first is the business model, and the second is the operating model that serves that business model to push that into their respective markets and customer engagement and all of the stuff, right? And again, this is also a Gartner report, right, which basically says, and this has been consistent over the last few years, right, around 60 plus, which is almost all the CXO groups that Gartner has interviewed and most of the other services as well, right? They see that the operating model that has been built on legacy for such a long time, right, is the one that is actually pulling the business model and not allowing the organization to be agile enough to go to the markets with new offerings or offerings in new products or new services, right? Or even for that matter, tweaks in existing offerings, right? For example, there are a lot of these companies or startups over the last few years. Most of them, if you've heard, and I'm sure you have read a lot of them, is their original idea has failed, but they've kind of pivoted their companies to launch new features or a new product on an existing feature that they have built on an original idea, right? To be able to kind of pivot from an original product idea to launch something new. If organizations are built on legacy systems, is extremely hard. Practically, unless when you re-architect the whole thing, wouldn't be possible, right? So essentially what most of the organizations are going through is that the legacy operating model is overburdening the organization in a way and not allowing the organization to kind of get into the market faster, to be able to compete in the market faster, to be able to kind of onboard customers faster, right? So, and that is where this whole hyperautomation comes into picture, to be able to kind of allow for that flexibility and scalability at the same time. Over the last few years, again, almost all of you on the call probably, and many more outside, are on the modernization game, right? Legacy to cloud, or the re-architecting their entire on-prem application ecosystems, IT ecosystems, and all of the stuff. While there are aspects of modernization where hyperautomation is partly applicable, like rehosting and refactoring, which is more a lift and shift into the cloud environments and the cloud ecosystems. Where hyperautomation really comes into play is basically around when organizations feel the need to re-architect their technology systems, which are part of the broader operating model that drives the business, right? get through with that necessary market positioning, right? And that's where we're going through, right? Now, what does that mean, right? Now we'll just come to in a bit, but re-architecting and rebuilding your legacy to be able to meet the needs of the market and your consumers or the customers, right? And how do we do it? Is that concept of hyperautomation that Gartner and a lot of us, in terms of service providers talking about, right? Which is basically a bag full of technologies, well, from end to end, from a business process, identifying which needs to be re-engineered in terms of the process itself. And again, by the way, when I say process, almost all of you probably know there are business processes, there are operational processes, there are tech processes, right? Almost, I mean, one cannot exist exclusive to the other, right? So they're all interlinked, interoperable, and if you kind of change one, you've got to kind of have an understanding with regards to what impact it has upstream and downstream and so on and so forth, right? Now, while we are doing that exercise, the most pertinent point is that the technology systems, right, from an hyper-automation or an automation perspective, from a legacy standpoint, that is basically which is basically serving the operating model, needs to be re-architected and rebuilt for that agility to kind of come into existence, right? And that's where you probably have this question: what exactly is hyper-automation? Right now, as I said earlier, it is actually a framework or a concept as opposed to a technology itself. It's basically a combination of multiple technology stacks, like a low code plus an RPA plus data or an AI, right? Or it could be a combination of all the five that you see there, which is AI, low code, RPA, data, and cloud. Or it could be as simple as just data and cloud, right? The point is these are the technologies that are starting to kind of take over, and make any organizational composable enough. When I say composable enough, modular enough to be able to kind of take multiple components of the system, assemble and reassemble them, and then provide that new feature set or the new product or the new service to the customer on demand, as opposed to a long, lengthy life cycle of a rollout, right? So, hyperautomation essentially is the combination of all of them. I mean, while these are all the technologies you can see in the word cloud, you have intelligent business process management system, you have machine learning coming there. Sometimes we'll have to kind of throw some package software. When I say package software, you could think about something like NetSuite for finance, where if that is the core system, then there are all the other stuff like AI and RPA that you could wrap around that to be able to make that core system far more efficient from a business standpoint, thereby getting the necessary outcome in terms of whether it is a competitive advantage or the new feature set, or or a new product set or a new service set that you want to kind of evolve or roll out into, right? Now, what does that exactly mean in terms of its influence on the operating model itself, and what are those two or three things that will need to kind of get addressed for program like a hyper automation to progress within a company, right? And that's basically about redesigning the business capabilities on the business model side. Then, based on that, as an output, take that, implement those business capabilities. Contributing components. When I say when I use the word components, think of it like Lego blocks, right? If you're able to kind of componentize a particular system, when I say system, I'm talking about the enterprise as a whole. Divide that into multiple functions, business, functional, engineering, and all stuff. Once we are able to kind of componentize the last measurable unit of it, and that will basically give us the wings with regards to Lego blocks work, right? You could basically assemble and reassemble the same assets, whether they're tech assets, whether they're process assets, or whether they are, information assets or data assets, right? So you could basically assemble and reassemble those assets in a way to be able to launch any product or any service line to your particular markets and customers accordingly at like on-demand types, right? Without having to kind of go through that long chain of development life cycles and the governance and that entire hoop of legacy models of working, right? Then you could when componentization happens at that last level of measurable unit, right? It's not just about assemble and reassemble components, but you could basically take an entire set of components from an innovation standpoint to be able to orchestrate some new capabilities, right? You could launch in the market as well, or within your own organization to be able to drive efficiencies, right? Not just on the features and new products, but within the organization to drive efficiency and drive costs down, thereby kind of trying to expand your necessary margins, right? You would basically do that to ensure a great financial health for the company. What is componentization and how does that happen, right? And this is where this whole topic of composability comes in, right? And this is, I mean, I can take a 2-day, 3-day workshop on composability, right? Composability is a very, very key system design principle when it comes to architecting anything, whether it is not just an enterprise or a technology or a business function, but anything outside personal life as well, right? If you want to kind of build a house or know how cars are manufactured, you basically bring all the components of a particular product called the study table, right, out to the last component possible where it becomes a DIY, thereby having a really good handle with regards to how those components can be attached. Now, the components that work for something like a study table where you could actually build an IKEA table, you could use the same components to actually allow for it to build a dining set, you know what I mean? So you could basically interchange the components in such a way to be able to deliver on new products using the same component class of the same process assets, information, data, etc., etc. Right? These are some of the strategic dimensions of what a hyperautomation approach would look like. Essentially, touching upon value, the architecture evolution, data is the center for everything, and this is where AI comes into picture, right? As the components get built, each of the components is being built and data engineered, right? The concept of data engineering on a particular component is absolutely critical for the success of any hyperautomation project, right? It is not just building components, assembling, reassembling, but when you throw data at the center of the whole thing, the application of AI when a system gets built, right, becomes easier with whether machine learning models, prediction, pattern recognitions with regards to how the products are working, how the services are working, how your internal functions are working. You'll be able to kind of make better decisions, right? Which is why data at the center of any when you throw data at the center of any hyperautomation project, once the system is finished, an overlay of AI on top of it will actually give you magic wings, right? It's like essentially saying, it's essentially 3D printing is software, right? And that's the beauty of it, right? What Amzur does, this is tell here is all about hyperautomation, right? In terms of assembling, reassembling, componentization, composability, decoupling, deconstructing and reconstructing a particular system once that composability is achieved at the lowest level is all the fundamental building blocks of any hyperautomation project, with the combination of multiple tech stacks like AI, RPA, low-code platforms at the center of the whole automation work, then cloud and data and so on and so forth, right? Now, what Amzur does, we have a very unique proprietary consulting framework, the way we go about achieving this, right? So, and we call that SHAPE, right? At the end of it, when we engage ourselves with a particular customer, our fundamental objective is to basically give a shape to that particular business outcome, from which we work backwards to understand what is the current situation. We draw up a hypothesis, analyze the thing. At the end of it, we don't want to solve a wrong problem, right? we want to basically ensure that the problem statement is right. We don't want to solve the wrong problem, otherwise, it's going to have a significant impact negatively across many other components or functions of the enterprise of the company if you're trying to solve the wrong problem, because as I said earlier, they're all interrelated, right? The entire stack of enterprise operating model and technology model, they're all interrelated in such a way that once we identify the problem and the root of it, right, we construct a hypothesis to be able to kind of test it. We analyze all the data to understand if the problem is right and to what depth it is. Then we provide the recommendations of this consulting gig, right? And we provide a detailed report to the sponsors, which is the organizations, to basically say these are the top 2, 3, 4 things that need to be done to drive that necessary business outcome that you're looking at, which is gaining, say, for example, 4% of the market share, or increasing the revenue by about, like, say, 7% or 10% over the next about 2 years, or getting a control on your cost efficiencies by a certain percentage. So we work out that entire model based on the actual problem statement, and then we basically execute the whole hyperautomation program as a project from an execution standpoint once the sponsor agrees with it, right? So now, as part of this, now you may ask a question, so this is all good. So what exactly is the basis for this particular consulting framework? And this is what we do, which is exactly what I just said, which is we have a proprietary framework called Unified Ops Framework. When I say Ops Framework, don't confuse Ops with operations, which is like a back office operations, but Ops in this context is basically the operating model of a particular enterprise or a company or an organization, right? And the way we basically execute that shape consulting framework is do these 5 things, right? Which is we identify which are the processes that are basically lagging or holding back the enterprise from moving forward. We try and re-engineer and optimize them. We identify which are the technology sets that are there, which are complex in nature, but that need to be modularized for you to kind of assemble, reassemble them for a composable architecture, composable enterprise. Then we throw in the necessary tools and technologies like a low-code platform, AI, or an RPA, depending on the nature of the problem, which tool set is best suited for to address that particular problem. Then we have, obviously, as I said earlier, data is at the center of the whole business, right? Then we apply overlay on top of it, AI on top of it. Then that drives the whole decision making, and then we wrap up the entire program with governance, compliance, and change management to ensure that things work like clockwork, and we don't end up with any regulatory issues or any compliance issues, and so on and so forth, right? So that's a very unique framework, and we have this framework for especially for FinOps, for finance organization. We have this framework detailed out of the playbook for product ops, which is product development lifecycle. We have this playbook developed for cloud ops for any company that is wanting to move to cloud and take advantage of the cloud assets. Then we have this for AI ops as well. If you want to implement AI within your organizations across multiple portfolios of your IT ecosystem or business ecosystem, we have a playbook that we have developed on the basis of this unified ops framework that we would come in, execute that as well. Right? We would use our low-code RPA, artificial intelligence, and cloud and all stuff, essentially focused around these 6, right? There are many other use cases, but essentially around these 6, which is task workflows, automation, new application development. So at Amzur, we have our own product set. So we have built our own local platform called Stackion. And we also work with other local platforms on other RPA tools as well, right? Which will basically give you that necessary speed with regards to launching or a new application that you have in mind, or customizing your existing application to be able to meet the needs of composable architecture or composable enterprise, right? We basically integrate application-wide, application enterprise-wide to be able to eliminate any data issues, because the data pipelines have to be created at the core for information to kind of flow in a way it makes sense for a composable architecture, right? That's what it is all about, right? So I'm also happy to let you know that I know this is a deep subject. It's not rocket science, but once we start to understand, if we are basically taking that to the next level by orchestrating multiple technology stack and stitching them together to give the benefit of business agility and cost efficiencies for organizations, right? So, and I'm happy to let you know that I'm okay to spend about anywhere between 4 to 8 hours with anybody on the call to kind of help them through understanding this. And if that discussion of 4 to 8 hours could help you reorganize and reassess your current technology ecosystems within your respective companies, I'd be more than glad to kind of spend some time and we will work together collaboratively to kind of help you get through with that. Thank you very much.